Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me and Michael's. We're so excited to be crafting with you. I'm going to go through all of our fun supplies to make your own springtime wall hanging. We are going to be making this cute little wall hanging that's really easy to hang and be a little decorative piece all springtime long. We have a little template that you hopefully printed out if you wanted to use a template. This has all of our little pieces for our insects that we'll be cutting out of foam sheets today. If you don't want to make an insect, but maybe you want to draw a different animal, a bunny or a butterfly or just a rainbow, you can do that as well. And you could still go through all the steps of how to make that little wall hanging itself. And you could do any design on the front if you want to do something different. So to make this, like I said, we're going to be using a little template if you want to make this little beetle with me. And we'll be using lots of colors of foam sheets. So I've got, you can use any colors you want. I'm going to be making mine out of white foam for the background. And then our little bug will be out of yellow and green foam sheet. So it'll really pop against the background. I also have some black construction paper from Creatology as well. And we have our Creatology Chenille stems. So I've got this whole mega pack here. Our handle or little hanger piece here is made of fuzzy sticks or chenille stems, as well as the little antenna on the beetle. So we'll pull out some fun colors here. You can use any color, of course, that you want. And then we are using some glitter glue pins. And these are an optional step. You could also use sequins or rhinestones or paint. You could also just use markers if you want to draw little extra designs on your banner when it's all done. And then I've got some fun beads as well. I'm going to be using some of our plastic beads from this Creatology Friendship Kit to add a little extra pizzazz to the hanger on our wall hanging. And then lastly, just a couple tools. We will be using scissors, either a pencil or a marker to do some tracing. And then we are using glue dots and some liquid glue. And with that, I think that's everything you're going to need. So if you haven't already, you can run around and gather everything and we'll get started. All right. So to start, we are going to cut out this portion of our actual little wall hanging or banner. And you can see here on the back, the way we're going to attach it is this top portion actually fold over, and then we'll kind of sandwich or lock the chenille stem inside of it. So we're going to just cut a long rectangle with a little rounded edge. You can draw it out or you can freehand cut it. It's totally up to you. If you draw it out, a pencil will work or a marker. I'm going to use a black Creatology marker just so you can see it a little bit easier on camera. And this one here, the little sample, is about 6 inches wide. You can make yours bigger or smaller. It's totally up to you. But I'm going to use one edge of my foam sheet here as the edge of my wall hanging. And then I'm just going to draw a line coming in a couple inches from the side. And just draw a long straight line down. And then I'm going to connect here and here, but with like a rounded edge. So sort of like a half circle at the bottom to create this little rounded shape at the bottom. You can also do yours just a straight edge. You don't have to do a rounded bottom if you don't want to. But to do that, kind of like to mark where it's going to end. So just do the little mark here, and then I'm just going to go down and start to curve. And then once you get to a little more than halfway, start to curve back up. And we're going to cut right along the inside of this line to remove all this all the black pin. This is just sort of an outline, and then you can clean it up with your scissors. And for this sheet of foam, you can see that, like I said, it's about 6 inches wide that we're cutting this down. And then this is about 8 or 9 inches long. And so you want to make sure it's long enough that we have about a half an inch or so that we can fold over at the top in order to add our hanger. Okay, so now we're going to go in along our line that we just drew, and we're just going to cut right along the top of it. So you can see I'm still following my line, but I'm cutting just above it so that I'm using it more as a guide. I know where my scissors should be, but I'm cutting just above it, and that way it's going to make the black mark disappear and doesn't have to be part of our finished look. And as I'm cutting, I'm just pulling my foam all the way into my scissors as wide as they go, and then pressing down. You can see on this side, it's a little more rounded than this side where my edge was. So I'm just going to go over this and just trim it up a little bit and cut off that edge. And if you feel like there's anything else you want to trim, you can always do that after the fact. Like I feel like this little edge over here just looks a little bit longer. I'm just going to cut it down a little. There you have your little rounded bottom, and then you have a flat top up here, and this is where we're going to attach our hanger when we're ready to do that. So this is going to be your first step. We're now going to cut out our insect or our little beetle. So I can set this aside for a moment. And then we're going to use this template that we printed out ahead of time. I'm going to take my scissors and cut along these template lines. And like I said at the beginning, you can make your own style bug, whether you want to do a different type of insect or if you want to do a totally different animal or picture. Or you can draw your own shapes that are very similar to this if you didn't print it out ahead of time. And we're doing all of these different shapes instead of just one beetle because these are all going to be layered. And so that way you're going to have a lot of different dimension to your finished project. Rather than just one flat beetle, all of these different pieces are going to be out of different materials and stacked on top of each other, which will create some height in different places. So this is going to be our little beetle body. And then we've got two little beetle wings. And then we've got some other little shapes here, and we're going to trace these out twice. So these are all of our different size legs for our beetle. And as you can see in our sample here, they're the same shape, just in different, just on both sides. So we'll just trace one template and cut one template out. But then we'll just cut one template out, but then we can trace it multiple times and cut out multiple final pieces. When you're working with some of these small pieces, like these little insect legs that are pretty small and got tiny little edges to cut out, just take your time to slowly go around all your sides. I also find sometimes cutting the smaller piece away from the rest of your paper can help. Again, you can also draw all these shapes. So if you're having trouble cutting them out, you can just freehand draw it. You can just even look at these little pieces and then draw your own if you'd rather do that. And as we're just kind of getting started here, just like Rich said at the beginning, if you have any questions or if you want to share if you're doing something besides the beetle on your wall hanging, put it in the Q&A. We would love to know what you're making at home. There we've got all of our pieces for our beetle. So again, we've got our little beetle body here, 2 different wings, and then we should have 3 different size legs. And we'll start with our little beetle body here. You can use, again, any colors that you might want. I'm going to use a yellow for the beetle. And so I'm going to take a pencil or a marker, and I'm going to trace. I'm going to lay down my little template and then just take my marker and trace along the edge. And this little paper one that we cut out already, if you get marker and things on that, it doesn't matter. This isn't part of your craft. It's just a tool. So you could use it over and over again. If you wanted to make more beetles, you can save your templates, but you don't have to worry about if you get any marker or pencil on that. And then we're going to cut this out. And then, which is like this, you can still kind of see the black border along the little beetle, but if you flip it over, that all disappears and you won't see it once we attach it. And then we can trace our little wings. Again, I'm going to hold down my paper template with a finger or two and then just drag your marker along the edge of the paper. One little wing there. Again, if you flip it over, start to see it coming together. So far, it looks a little bit like a lemon, but it won't. To come together here, we can see our little wings. Okay, now probably our trickiest part is going to be tracing and cutting out more of our little tiny legs. And we're going to be using our construction paper for the legs. And I'm using black paper, which a black marker will be hard to see. It'll be kind of challenging to see over the camera in general. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer, see if that will help for you. But we're basically going to do the same thing we've already been doing. So I'm going to take my first little leg, I'm going to hold it down onto my paper, and I'm going to use a pencil. And a pencil shows up usually shows up much better on black paper than a marker even does. The like metallic in the lead shows up easier. So I'm gonna just trace around my little leg. There you can see. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can see I kind of messed up my outline right there. It's no big deal. Can easily just erase that afterward, especially using pencil. Okay, and we're going to do that twice for each size. So our beetles are going to have a total of 6 legs, 3 on each side. So we're going to trace each of them twice. And then the tiniest one. You can see there I've got 6 total little legs. And then we can cut these ones out. Again, getting the sort of little rounded edges on the little feet are probably the hardest part. There we've got our first little leg. Getting there, we've got our 2 smallest, our 2 medium. Now we're going to do our 2 longest legs. There we've got all of our little legs ready to go. Some of these scraps out of our way. All right. So we can now attach our little beetle onto the front of our wall hanging. We're going to want to grab our little Chenille stem for its little antenna at the same time right now, as well as your Chenille stems for your hanger. So I'm going to use yellow, and we're going to use 2 of them and twist them together to make one handle. We've got all of these little pieces waiting for us. I think we'll add on our hanger or the handle at the top first, and that way we can then attach our beetle and decorate it. And that has some liquid glue and glitter glue at the end. And so that way it can all lay flat and all your other steps will be finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to twist these 2 Chenille stems together. I'm going to lay them kind of on top of each other, just like this. So I have my 2 ends slightly on top of each other, and then make a little X with the 2 ends, and then wrap it around and around. And do the same thing on the other side. So wrap it over and then go all the way around and over again. And then that turns it into one long Chenille stem. But we're going to do the same thing on the other side to basically make a giant circle. So I'm going to take my 2 ends now, cross them, and then twist by going over, then under, back over, under, over, and then just kind of smooth out that end, tuck it in. Same thing here. So this little X is on top of this other portion. So I'm going to go under, and then over, and then under, and then over. And friends, I forgot one of our steps. We need to put our beads on first. So I'm going to untwist one of mine. So sorry. The good thing about using these is that they untwist, so it's not permanent. So if you want to add beads, which I'm sure you do because they're adorable, we are going to do that first. So we still have this on here, but we're going to add some beads on. So let's go ahead and attach this to our little wall hanging first. And to do that, we're going to use our glue dots. And I'm going to take a glue dot and stick it along the top edge of my wall hanging. So we have our rounded edge down here and our flat edge at the top still. And we're going to put a few glue dots along the top flat portion. Now I'm going to take my extra long fuzzy stick here. I'm going to lay it right on top of those glue dots, leaving my unattached ends out. I'm going to press that into the glue dots. And you can add a couple extra glue dots here on top of this. We've got a bunch of glue dots. Some of these are still showing up from behind the fuzzy stick we added, and then some more on top. And then you're just going to roll this kind of on top of itself to fold it and lock it in place. And give it a good little press, smooth it out a little bit, make sure that the glue dots are getting some pressure. It's always a key thing with any sort of adhesive. You want to make sure that you are giving it pressure, and that'll lock it in place. If you feel like you have any little gaps or an edge that you need more glue dots, you can just stick another one in there. Sometimes even you can kind of fold a glue dot. I'm gonna put one more in that little gap. Make sure that's nice and secure. When you flip it back over, now you've got a nice clean edge up here. You don't see that seam that we just made. Instead, it's nice and clean and ready to go. Okay, so now we can get to the beading and finish our little hanger at the top here. Using our Creatology plastic beads. You can, of course, use any style beads you might want or color. Wooden beads would work as well, or clay beads. But I'm going to use some of these iridescent little plastic beads. I'm going to use just some yellow and white that are both have like an iridescent color to them. That's really fun. I'm going to thread them directly onto your Chenille stem. So just stick a bead right on and push it down until it meets your wall hanging. How cute. Fun little added sparkle. And I'm doing every other. So I have like one yellow, then one clear iridescent bead. And depends on how many beads you want to add. You could certainly bead the entire hanger if you wanted to, or you can just add a few like I am just to give it a little something extra along the sides. And see, I just made a little pattern of kind of going every other one from yellow to clear, back to yellow, and just strung on like 10 beads. And then we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. If you're using thinner beads or beads with a small hole, say like these little gold beads in here that have a really small bead hole, it might be harder to get them onto your Chenille stem. They usually do fit because what's so big on the little fuzzy stick is actually all the fuzz, and that the wire inside is really thin. But if you're having trouble, just switch to a larger bead. Again, I'm just switching back between the two colors until I have 10 beads on either side. Then we've got our little rounded wall hanging portion and our attached hanger that's kind of sticking up in these two arms right now. And beads, you can kind of push and bend your wire up. And now we can attach these two ends again. So we're going to do the same thing we did, but cross them over a little X and then go over and under, over and under, and twist it around and around to connect them. Do the same thing with both ends. And then since it is so bendable, pliable, you can kind of move it around a little bit until you get the exact shape you want. If you want it to be more rounded or you want it to be really pointed, that's totally up to you. But there you have already your little hanger is almost finished. All of your construction is done. You've got your little banner here and your hanger. It's going to be easy to put up on your wall. So now we can attach our little beetle. And to do that, we're actually going to start by attaching the legs to the back of the beetle body. So I'm going to flip over my beetle. It really doesn't matter which side the beetle is. You just have to pick one that's the front and the back. Since some of my marker is still showing on the edge of my cutout, I'm gonna say that that's the back. And then I can take some of my liquid glue. I'm gonna do a few drops along the sides. And then we're going to attach all of our little legs here. So I have my smallest legs that are going to go on the bottom. Now I've got my medium legs, and these are going to be facing up. So like it's kind of crawling up. And then we can do the last long leg. And then I'm going to add some more glue into the middle. And I can flip this whole thing over and lay it down in the center. And while your liquid glue is still wet, you can kind of move your legs around a little bit if you want to change the positioning of them, have them in certain angles, and then just give it a little bit of pressure to get it all to lay flat. And you can see we've got the little legs kind of stick up a little bit, creating little shadows. And so they're glued to the back, but rather than them being glued to the front, all these little legs kind of can kick out a little bit. Okay, so next we're going to add our little wings here. You can kind of get an idea of where you want them to be. And then we're going to add a little bit of liquid glue underneath those as well. And see, I have like a good little swirl of it, but it's not a huge glob. You don't need a ton, and it will stick really well with the foam sheets. And again, give it a little bit of pressure and spread out that glue. And now it's starting to look much more like a cute little beetle. Okay, we can add our little antenna next. So we're going to cut some small pieces of our chenille stem here. And the easiest way to do that is to push your stem all the way into the mouth of your scissors. So open up your scissors as wide as you can. And then you want to push them into the mouth as close to the handle. So push it in and then put pressure down and snap it. And then it will fly away like mine just did. And you can easily cut them into small little pieces. Sometimes if you just use the tip of the scissors, it will just kind of bend the stick instead of actually cutting through it. So I cut these little antenna pieces off that are like 1.5 inches or so, a little more than 1 inch. And then I'm going to bend them just slightly to give them a little curve. So I'm not bending them completely in half, just a little curve to them. And I want them to curve both directions. So I can have one going to the left and one going to the right. And you can manipulate them a little bit more. You can cut them smaller or you can make them longer, depending on what look you want. And then for these, we're going to use glue dots again. So like glue dots are usually the best option when it comes to your chenille stems. Liquid glue will work, but because these are so fuzzy and more of a fabric than like a paper or a foam, that sometimes it just kind of absorbs the glue and just gets wet and doesn't really stick. So if you do a glue dot, what I like to do is kind of fold it up. And you don't need it on the whole thing, just down at the bottom. And then stick the edge right up against the foam sheet edge. And then do the same thing with the second one. Again, I'm kind of folding my little glue dot into a little line instead of a dot, and stick that on the back. And then I can push it just right to the edge of my little beetle head, so it looks like it's coming out from it. Then again, because I just use glue dots at the bottom here, you can kind of see that it's coming off the backing a little bit, which I think is kind of fun. It gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional look. And look how cute your little beetle is. And from here, you can keep decorating as much as you want. We're gonna add some glitter glue pins together, but you could throw some googly eyes on this little fella if you wanted to. You can definitely add sequins, or you can do rhinestones instead of glitter. Again, you could just use markers if you wanted to do little designs also. I'm going to be using our Creatology glitter glue pins. And you can mix and match different colors or any ones that you want. I'm gonna do like a little polka dot border on here. And so I'm just gonna squeeze my glitter glue pin. You don't need to give it a ton of pressure because it does come out sometimes pretty quickly. So just go slowly, and then with the tip, kind of push it down till it meets the banner, and you'll get just one tiny little dot of glitter. It's gonna look more three-dimensional right now while it is drying, because it's going to be glitter in the liquid glue. But once it dries, it will just dry flat and just be a little dot of glitter. And I'm just going down the edge, doing little green glitter dots. And a quick tip, a lot of times when you're using either paint or glitter, glue, anything that's wet and easy to smear, instead of moving my hand around and over my work, I can move the work itself. So I can turn this upside down and continue doing dots, and my hand can still rest on my countertop instead of resting on top of my art. Got a cute little glitter border around the edge. And we're going to add some cute glitter to the beetle itself as well. And again, I'm going to flip this around instead of potentially pushing my hand through the glitter I've already added. I'm going to add some little polka dots in glitter onto my little wings. And this is kind of hard to see on camera. Could use a more contrasting color. We'll do a stripe of that too. But you can see this glitter is so similar to my color. That's really fun. That it's all going to be kind of one color, but you'll still get dots of glitter. I'm going to do a stripe of these. Those little dots. And then we can add another stripe. Maybe we'll add a little more contrast and different color to our yellow and green story here. We'll do some little pink glitter. good thing about using these glitter glue pins is one, it's much less mess than free flowing glitter. Also, it's really easy to wipe off. So if you say smeared it or aren't happy with a design that you put on there, you can grab a napkin or a paper towel and you can actually just wipe it off before it dries and it will come off really easily, especially when you're working on the foam. Turning this beetle into a little more of a colorful one with different stripes of dots. And you can add more if you want to as well in different places. Like I said, you could add little googly eyes. I might do some little silver eyes. Ooh, see, just as I said to be careful, it came out. So I'm just gonna take my finger and can just wipe that right off. Just as I said, very easy, comes right off. And then I'm just gonna squeeze out a little bit of the silver glue right toward the top, kind of right where it meets the antenna, to be like little glowy silver eyes. And then you can continue to add more if you want. Maybe you are happy with this. I know I definitely am. It's looking awfully cute. But you can continue adding more color, whether you're using glitter or markers. As we all know, Creatology has all the options to make your springtime wall hanging perfect just for you. So I hope that you guys all had a lot of fun. I know I definitely did. Thanks so much for joining me and Michael's, and looking forward to crafting with you soon. Thanks.